The materials in Chaplin's vault showed that his persecution went beyond Hollywood's blacklist. Government papers demonstrated a systematic operation to damage his film career and his ability to work in any entertainment industry worldwide. Economic warfare was used to push him into poverty and surrender, not only professional ostracism. Contained letters revealing how the U.S. administration encouraged foreign governments and international organizations to deny Chaplin work or performance chances. American diplomatic cables revealed threats of economic punishment against Chaplin's hosts, extending his international isolation beyond the public's. Always understood. More troubling. Documents proving his associates and supporters were blacklisted. Actors, directors, writers, and others associated with Chaplin were listed in the vault. Because they worked with him or backed his free speech, their careers were wrecked. Many hundreds were collateral victims of persecution. The government's war against them destroyed their life. Chaplin. The files showed how the blacklist damaged Chaplin's commercial interests beyond filmmaking. His credit was denied by banks under pressure. Distribution of his films was threatened with government action. Even charities were warned against receiving his money. The persecution was staggering, intended to ruin his personal and professional life. It was most astonishing that the blacklist was built to last. Documents explored ways to prevent the Chaplin from rebuilding his profession, regardless of political opinions. There was more to this than political faults. It was meant to inspire other entertainers, who may convey unpleasant political views. The vault also showed how Chaplin and his associates overcame the blacklist by creating alternate distribution and financial networks to reach audiences. This clandestine network included entertainment industry figures, political activists, civil rights leaders, and foreign sympathizers, who saw the Chaplin attack as an attack on artistic freedom. But the records showed that the Chaplin blacklist was one of the most extensive and vicious political persecutions in American history, designed to silence one guy and terrify an industry into political compliance. Secrets may have been Chaplin's vault's most explosive. Audio recordings of important American politicians, entertainers, and media people private chats. These unannounced recordings featured admissions and talks that may have ruined lives and changed Hollywood's golden age. The most disturbing recordings showed FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover and Hollywood executives discussing ways to persecute Chaplin and other suspected communist supporters. These discussions showed government monitoring and federal law enforcement private industry collusion to damage targeted persons' careers. Other recordings show studio chiefs and government officials discussing how to remove Chaplin's pictures from distribution and prohibit him from cooperating with big companies. These talks exposed the blacklist's behind-the-scenes negotiations, including political persecution camouflaged as business judgments. More troubling were recordings of journalists and government officials showing how federal agents had coordinated and influenced Chaplin's media portrayal. These tapes showed how the government created articles, gave friendly media selective information, and planned public opinion campaigns to ruin Chaplin's character. The vault also had recordings of Chaplin and Hollywood figures who had publicly distanced themselves from him, privately expressing support and sorrow. These tapes showed how even supportive colleagues had to compromise friends and principles to protect their careers, and most personally, in Hollywood's McCarthy-era climate of fear. Devastating recordings of Chaplin's old acquaintances discussing him after his exile showed shame, anxiety, and reasoning that enabled so many to persecute him. These recordings showed how political persecution affects victims and spectators psychologically. These recordings generated questions about how Chaplin got them and what other discussions he recorded. The recordings' quality and complexity suggested professional surveillance equipment, methods previously available only to intelligence services or their partners. Most crucially, these tapes proved the conspiracy that had wrecked Chaplin's American career and may have vindicated him if made public during his lifetime. Audio recordings made by Chaplin's children during their exile were distressing. Interviews showing how political persecution hurts innocent family members. These tapes, reportedly created for family therapy, captured children struggling to grasp why their lives had been ripped apart by forces beyond their control. School and government agents harassed Chaplin youngsters, according to the recordings, are constantly questioned about their father's politics. Their little voices on magnetic tape expressed perplexity, fear, and indignation at their family's treatment. Some recordings revealed 8-year-olds struggling to grasp communism, persecution, and exile, which no child should have to face. More unsettling were recordings of the youngsters questioning their father's safety, fearing the American government would arrest or punish him. These exchanges show the family under constant stress, never knowing when persecution will increase. The vault also contains letters the children wrote, but never mailed, lamenting being separated from friends and extended family due to their father's politics. These letters highlighted how political persecution had left innocent children punished for their father's opinions and associations, lonely and isolated. Some recordings showed older children and their parents wondering if they could return to America and live normal lives. These exchanges showed persecution's long-term psychological effects, demonstrating how political paranoia affects future generations. Most moving were recordings of the children defending their father to doubting friends and relatives, displaying their great loyalty despite their youth. These recordings showed children having to protect their family's honor, a role no child should have to take on. Political persecution was shown in the children's statements, indicating how government measures to punish one person had hurt an entire family. Their voices reminded us of the human cost of political paranoia and the innocent victims of ideological warfare. These recordings showed Chaplin's resolve to record his family's misery, possibly expecting future generations would realize what they faced during America's harshest artistic tyranny. The vault's financial paperwork showed that the American administration had waged economic warfare against Chaplin to bankrupt him and force his surrender. These documents showed a concerted operation to ruin his riches through frozen assets, tax probes, and prohibited business transactions outside usual legal enforcement. The most alarming discovery was that the IRS had been used against Chaplin, conducting politically driven audits and investigations rather than legitimate tax compliance problems. Tax officials and FBI agents discussed using tax law against Chaplin in the vault, exposing illicit and unconstitutional government collaboration. Hidden for decades in an ordinary Swiss home were secrets that would change everything we knew about Charlie Chaplin. The famed comedian's vault was open to historians. The late 1990s discovery shocked the entertainment industry and revealed cinema's greatest genius's secret story. These documents revealed a sophisticated web of FBI monitoring, political persecution, and artistic talent, painting a different portrait of the man behind the tiny tramp that was purposely hidden for over 50 years. On Lake Geneva in Switzerland, the Menor du Band's grand gates had been silent since Charlie Chaplin's 1977 death. The great comedian spent his remaining 25 years on this magnificent estate, escaping the persecution that had drove him from America. But underneath this 19th-century elegance was a temperature-controlled vault Chaplin had built, shielded from inquisitive eyes and secured by compulsive security. Only Chaplin's immediate family and a few estate trustees knew the contents of a vault for 2 decades following his death. Una O'Neill Chaplin, the comedian's widow, jealously guarded his legacy, knowing the price he paid for speaking out in a paranoid political climate. She knew those steel-lined walls held artistic masterpieces and possibly explosive evidence of a government conspiracy that had torn her family apart. Finally opening the vault with film restoration professionals in the late 1990s, the Chaplin family expected to unearth lost films and personal items. Instead, they found a perfectly arranged library of thousands of documents, photos, and recordings that revealed the narrative of one man's fight against a system out to destroy him. Vault's climate-controlled environment kept everything perfect. Emotionally charged handwritten letters, surveillance photos of sensitive family moments, and spy-worthy recording gear. But probably most terrifying were the boxes of government records, FBI reports, and intercepted contacts that revealed systemic persecution beyond anything the public had anticipated. Little did those first historians know they were going to find one of the most extensive incidents of government harassment in American history, all against a guy whose only crime had been making people laugh while speaking his mind about social justice and human dignity. The story begins in 1922 in the sterile offices of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, J. Edgar Hoover, the ambitious young director who would govern the FBI for nearly 50 years, had his sights on a British-born comedian who was becoming America's most beloved performer. Hoover saw Charlie Chaplin as more than a comedian. Influencing the people was his role. Chaplin's vault had copies of the FBI's early reports on him, which showed the government's petty and vengeful attitude. The probe began over Chaplin's support for a second front in World War I to help the Soviet Union, a position shared by many Americans, including President Franklin Roosevelt. Hoover saw these as communist tendencies that needed to be monitored, classified, and used as a weapon. The papers show a worrisome 30-year surveillance pattern. FBI agents tracked Chaplin's sexual relationships, financial activities, political statements, and private talks. They tapped his phones, accessed his correspondence, and put intelligence agents in his staff and social circle. Wow, this surveillance was deep. And Chaplin had managed to secure and retain the papers that meticulously recorded it. The FBI's purposeful leaks to friendly journalists and gossip columnists, coordinating a character assassination campaign that drove Chaplin into exile, made these findings even more stunning. Memos in the vault showed Hoover personally approving the dissemination of detrimental Chaplin personal material, possibly timed to maximum career damage with his films. The most unsettling discovery was that the FBI and international spy agencies monitored Chaplin's movements in Switzerland after he left America. American government paranoia pursued a man whose only weapons were laughter and compassion across oceans. Chaplin's vault contained damaging records from the 1940s paternity case that nearly wrecked his career. Joan Barry, an aspiring actress who had worked with Chaplin briefly, accused him of fathering her kid, making headlines for months. Yet the vault revealed the horrifying reality. The FBI supported Barry's charges and helped create the case against Chaplin, seeing it as a chance to ruin his reputation. The documents revealed that FBI agents tutored Barry on her testimony, advised her on legal matters, and coordinated media coverage to tarnish Chaplin's reputation. Blood testing had shown Chaplin was not Barry's father, but the public didn't know. However, the FBI suppressed this proof, keeping the scandalous claims in the news for months. Scarier, the vault's secret FBI wiretaps recorded government officials discussing how to exploit the Barry case to minimize Chaplin's influence on American culture. They nonchalantly discussed killing an innocent man, using it as a tool against suspected communist sympathizers. The vault had Chaplin's secret recordings. The comedian was more cunning than expected, capturing discussions that proved his innocence while chronicling the plot. These recordings captured his angry, betrayed voice. He understood the government's whole campaign against him, most heartbreakingly with a Chaplin's letters to his children explaining why their family was being torn apart by lies and allegations. These letters, never mailed but meticulously maintained, showed a man striving to maintain his dignity as his reputation was relentlessly undermined by the country he had served through wartime entertainment. Paternity lawsuit was never about justice. It was about devastation. The vault included evidence to clear Chaplin's name. I wish the world had heard the truth. Historians found Charlie Chaplin's secret existence as a political activist under film canisters and personal correspondence. While the public knew him as the lovable little tramp, the vault revealed a man who sacrificed everything to fight for his beliefs, frequently working in secret to avoid government persecution. The documents showed how Chaplin discreetly sponsored refugee organizations during World War II to help Jewish artists and intellectuals escape Nazi persecution. These were large donations. Chaplin went quiet, donated millions of cash through intermediaries to hide his involvement from the FBI. Prying eyes, receivers' thanks letters, often in multiple languages, showed a guy whose compassion went beyond his public character. Records demonstrating Chaplin's early civil rights activism were even more shocking. Activism, decades before Hollywood embraced it. The vault includes communication with NAACP executives, invoices for payments to anti-segregation organizations, and speech scripts he wrote, but never delivered for political reasons. Chaplin talked of his poverty and persecution in a touching document. Drawing analogies to African-American hardships demonstrated depth of insight few of his peers had. Vault showed Chaplin's savvy in international politics. He wrote to intellectuals and politicians worldwide about the Spanish Civil War and European fascism. These letters showed a more politically savvy man than his critics realized, someone who saw the global consequences of political upheavals before others did. Perhaps most profoundly, the collection included drafts of a book Chaplin planned to write about his political ideas, a credo of social justice and human dignity. The novel was abandoned when political persecution grew too strong. But the surviving shards showed a mind wrestling with his time's most pressing moral issues. These records showed that the FBI's portrayal of Chaplin as a naive communist sympathizer was false and deceptive. The only crime of this thoughtful, determined campaigner was caring too much about human misery in Chaplin's vault. Perhaps the most surprising discovery was enclosed in containers. Complete prints of films feared lost forever and works never viewed by outside Chaplin's intimate circle. Not preliminary cuts or experimental footage, these were fully realized. If ever released, these masterpieces could have transformed cinema.